creative friends, this is Joy. So I wanted to make a journal cover out of this pad of paper. It's a Canson watercolor 12 by 18 140-pound pad. I took out all the sheets, folded them in half so I could make my inserts for this journal. And then I figured out how big of a spine I needed, and it's 3 inches, so I measured that out and folded that accordion style. And then I'm using some Aleene's tacky glue to glue down, to glue this together, because I want the spine to have some thickness to it, so that way it's sturdy. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just using some Aleene's tacky glue on this piece to glue this together. And I use a credit card to kind of smooth it out, get the glue to smooth out a little bit. And then I take the back cover of the journal and I figure out what the center point is, and I make sure I get all the glue bits off of the back cover. And I use a metal ruler and a blade to cut this in half. So I have to stand up and put some pressure on this, so my apologies with my head getting in the way. And then I have to cut several times to try to cut through this cardboard. But then once I get this cut in half, this is going to be the front and the back cover of this journal. So then I take the piece, which was the front cover that I just glued, and I glue these 2 pieces to that using the Aleene's tacky glue. And when I glue these down, I make sure I leave a little bit of room so that when I close the covers, then there's room for it to close without there being any kind of binding. So that's what I'm doing here, and just leaving a little bit of room and then gluing that down and making sure it's somewhat straight. Straight enough anyway. So I check, yes, it seems like it's straight. And then I take this piece of craft paper and decide to glue this down on the other side. And this I didn't really need to do, I guess, because I end up covering this whole thing, but I thought that it would help strengthen it if I kind of had the covers sandwiched, on the journal. So I thought it would just add a little extra strength to the spine and to where these covers are glued. And I use a card to just try to make sure that it's on there good, and that there's no wrinkling or binding. And like you could see there was some wrinkling, so I kind of had to pull it back, and I put some more glue because it looked like that the chipboard kind of sucked up the glue. So I got that on there and I creased it really well. And so yeah, I just worked it to make sure that it was on there, and there wasn't going to be any buckling, and it was going to bend without any binding issues. So then I decided I wanted this to have a canvas cover. So I took a piece of canvas and cut it bigger than the cover, and I traced around it because I need to know where this is at so that I can sew around the canvas. I have 2 pieces of canvas here. So I sewed about 1/4 of an inch beyond where I drew my lines, and I made it like a pocket. So I put my cover in there, and then I sewed the other end closed. And then I decided that I didn't want this much canvas around the outside of the journal, so I cut off what the excess was down to, as you see here, I probably left about 1/4 of an inch, because what I would like is for the ends to fray. And as I'm working with creating my journal cover, I do pull off strings and start fraying the edges to get that worn look. So then here I just take some gesso and I cover the inside of the journal with the gesso. I believe this is the inside, it might be the outside, I don't remember. So anyway, I just put a healthy coat of that because this is ungessoed canvas, as you can see, and it actually is a, because canvas, if you price canvas like through the art supply stores or whatever, rolls of canvas is very expensive. And this here is just a painter's canvas drop cloth, which cost me really hardly anything, and it's huge. I've been cutting on this thing and using pieces of it for quite some time, and yeah, I mean, and like I said, it didn't hardly cost me anything. So check out your hardware supply stores and just look for, like, for the painters drop cloth with made out of canvas. So that works just as good. So anyway, I use a credit card here, or some kind of a gift card, and I'm just trying to get the edges. I couldn't get the edges with the brush, but I'm able to scrape up some of the gesso and use that, and it does pretty good getting the edges pretty crisp and straight for the most part. And I'm going just up to where the thread is where I sewed, because I want to leave the edges to where they will fray. So once that's dry, I turn that over, and you can kind of see at the top it's starting to pull a little bit, because once it gets wet with the gesso, the canvas will start to shrink as it dries. So I probably should have, like, left a little bit more room when I sewed it around the edges than like a quarter of an inch. It probably would have been better to leave like more like a half inch. But you know, it's fine. It worked out. I mean, the back, you can see here, looks kind of loose, but then once, I get this covered in gesso and it dries, it, you know, shrinks onto the cardboard cover, and it turns out just fine. So I wouldn't have wanted to leave too much room, because I did want this to have a fairly tight fit on the cover of this journal. So I did the same thing on the other side with the gesso, making sure that I get the back covered, but I avoided around the edges so that those can fray. And then here you can see I already started pulling some of the strings off. So I put down, this is just some chocolate acrylic paint on here on the one side, now that it's dried for the most part. And I'm adding some water to it because I didn't want it to be real thick and heavy on here. I want it to be like more thinned out, and I wanted to be able to get it to spread more. So yeah, I'm adding water to get it to spread and to kind of thin it out, because I don't want it real dark. My idea, like this, I decided was going to be the inside of the cover, and I wanted to be able to stamp some images on this to kind of add like a pattern design for the inside of the cover of this journal. That is my, idea anyway, or what I'm thinking, because I didn't want to just have the inside where it's just plain. I mean, I guess I could have, but like I said, I really kind of wanted to be able to stamp something on here in order to give it like some kind of a design for the inside of the cover. So I finished painting the inside and, getting that to where I'm happy, and I let that dry. So I got this Stays On Brown paint, or sorry, Stays On Brown ink pad, and I find these foam stamps that I've had forever and never really used them, and decided that I like the design, so I'm going to stamp these on here and kind of give it a little kind of a fancy look inside, the journal. And it's, not straight, it's not perfect, it's pretty wonky. As a matter of fact, you can see in the upper right hand corner, I wanted it closer to the top, but it's not. And then the other side, it's it's not. I'm just inking and stamping, inking and stamping. And it's not even giving me a perfect stamp, even though, I'm trying to get it on there as best I can. And that one didn't stamp good, so I stamped it again. But you know what? I mean, the point of doing this is to make it, my idea anyway of doing this is to make it to where it's kind of got more of a rustic, old, weathered kind of look anyway. So anyway, so I'm continue to use these foam stamps to stamp around and get the just different designs and fill up the front and the back. And I don't worry about the spine because that's going to be covered up anyway. My idea for this journal is I want to make it so that the pages that I put in here I can remove and work on them and then put them back in. So I will, be binding this so that I can remove the pages and work on them and then replace them when I'm done working on them, because I don't feel like that it would be easy to work in this journal if I was having to work in the journal like this with all the pages attached, if that makes any sense. So on the front cover, I had some ideas for it to decorate it. And as you can see here, my plan for this journal is this is actually for a class that I'm going to be starting in January called Book of Days. So I stamped that on a piece of paper, and the days is backwards, but that's fine, to get an idea of what it was going to look like and what size I needed. And I put it where I would want that to be. And then here I have an owl stencil, and I'm using modeling paste to put this owl on the front of this. And then this is Blick modeling paste, which is a lot thinner. And this, is the first time I've used this. And so, and the other modeling paste was basic, and it's a really nice thick modeling paste. So I have this Tim Holtz stencil that I decide I want to put some of this on this cover. So that's what I'm using the Blick modeling paste for, is to put this design on the cover. And so this works fine for this, but for what I need it for the words, it's not going to work, and I'll explain that here in a minute. So I had some kind of a spray on this stencil, but so there's a little bit of red or pink or whatever getting onto where I don't, want it, but it doesn't matter because it's all going to get painted over anyway. So I just take a baby wipe to clean the stencil off because I want to turn it over and have the design going the other way now for the two corners. So I'm use it to put the same similar design in each of the corners. And again, it's not perfect, but you know what? It's fine. By the time I'm done with this, it looks, pretty cool, and, you're not going to really notice it that much anyway. So here I'm doing the other corner, and then I have the spaces in between. So then I'm like, well, what am I going to do with that? I kind of would like a design to go all the way around. So then I decided to use the end of the stencil to fill in those areas. But for now, while that's drying, and I, dropped that and kind of messed up what I had done, I decided I wanted to try to get some of this basic modeling paste out because I need something thicker. The Blick modeling paste is way too thin. And this is where I want to stamp my title, Book of Days, on my journal. So I'm covering an area, with this thicker modeling paste, and I'm making sure that there is some thickness to it here. And my idea is that I was going to stamp the words into it, and then that way, you know, the title would be stamped into it. So I tried this one the first time, and it wasn't, it was right after I had put it on there, and it just stuck to my stamping, gummed it up. So I smoothed it over, and this is my second try. I was hoping that I could put black stays on ink, and when I stamped it, it would be inside the letters, but that didn't really work. So I'm like, forget it. I'm just going to stamp my words in here, and I sprayed it with a little bit of water because it helped it release. Because even though the modeling paste is, you know, still a little damp, it's still sticky, so I didn't want it to get stuck on there. So yeah, that helped to just give it a little spritz of water and help it to release. And so once I got that stamped in there, this is where I was like, well, I want to fill in those gaps. And so I just used the end of the same stencil and put that design in those areas where it's blank around the journal, so that way I kind of have a design all the way around. So then once I get this, excuse me, done, I decide, you know, I was going to have to let it dry before going in with paint. But I'm not a very patient person, and you will see that I decide to go in with paint a little sooner than I probably should have, and I kind of mess up, which is so frustrating, a little bit of this, but not around the outside, but my title, I kind of mess up. So like I was saying, here's where I decide, okay, oh, it's dry. I'm going to just go with paint, right? Bad idea. I should have waited way much more time. And then I realized that where I stamped my title is not dry, and I'm brushing, and the owl, I'm brushing off the top of it. So I managed to get the owl covered, and you know, just decide, okay, I'm not going to touch that anymore because, you know, as I'm brushing it, it's pulling up more and more of the modeling paste, and decided that I needed to stop brushing over the title because that, again, that was doing the same. It was just pulling up more of the modeling paste. I thought it was dry, but then it was not. So I brushed the letters almost practically off because they weren't, you know, the modeling paste isn't on there very thick, and I didn't press it, you know, really deep. So what I had to do, which you'll see here in a minute, is take a skewer and kind of, you know, I could still barely see, and scrape around to get, you know, the words scraped into the modeling paste. So that was a little frustrating, but, you know, it's fine. Like I said, I still could see the letters, so I was able to just scrape them and redo them a little bit here, and and then I just had to let that completely dry because, again, you know, I didn't want to end up messing up the whole thing again because that's frustrating. So anyway, that's what I'm doing here. I'm just using a skewer to try to trace around inside the letters and to fix that where I could just about brush them completely off. Oh, and what I was saying is this is a class that I'm just signed up for. It starts January 1st. It's a year-long class, so I'm really excited. And so I wanted to make this for that class. You know, you can buy a journal and use it, but, you know, or you can make one. And Effie Wild, who is hosting the class, I think she gives you like 3 different videos on how to make your journal. But I mean, I've been making journals for a while, a couple of years, And I had my own ideas. I mean, I took some of her ideas, I guess you could say, but not really. I mean, I just like the way that one of the journals that she showed you, you can pull the pages out, which I've done, made journals like that before, where you put, the elastic, and then you can put in, the journals and take them out. So I wanted to do that. And here I'm just taking whatever paints on my brush and trying to rough up the edges here, just because they're too perfect, pristine, and I don't want that. I don't want it covered because I still want it to fray, but just kind of, yeah. But so I like that idea. So I thought, yes, I want my journal to be like that, where I can just put in and pull out. Like I said, I've made journals, quite a few journals like that, but never one quite this big. And the other idea that I like that she did with one of her journals is she left dangles on the back and then tied on charms. Well, I decided I wanted to do that too. So I did that, but I didn't actually bind mine like she did. I completely did something different. So here the modeling paste is dry, so I just covered it up with the brown paint and tried to get that, covered good. And it looks like that, everything is covered up and it's like now you can't see anything, but I do decide to go over this with, I have a coppery kind of acrylic paint that I decide to go over it with. So here my idea, which did not work, was to take some black paint, water it down, get that down in the words, and then wipe it off, and then that way they would have black down in the words. That is the idea, but that's not. It didn't really work. I mean, you could kind of, sort of, but not really. It was frustrating. Yeah, I just thought that would be so easy and work perfectly, and nope, it does not. Or it didn't for me. A little bit you could, but it just, yeah. So, what I ended up doing, which was a little fussy, is tried a couple different things. So here I decided, okay, I'm gonna take the copper paint and help bring out the design. And here I took a little paintbrush. I'm like, well, maybe if I take this little paintbrush and get down in the grooves, with this, instead of watered down paint, which I did to begin with just straight black paint, I can get that to, you know, pop out some. That helped a little. But I ended up having to go over this again because it still wasn't standing out as much as I would have liked it to. So here I take the coppery acrylic paint that I have, and I'm wanting that owl to stand out, so I'm going over the top of that with this, so that who will stand out. And this is very similar to another journal that I made. I actually took some canvas and and as far as the cover kind of design with the owl, I took some of the same canvas and I decided to make a journal to add some notebooks to, like composition books to, and that one also had like a binding where I could put the composition books in and take them out. And so, but I didn't, I just took one single piece of canvas, I gessoed both sides, and then I did the modeling paste on the front cover with an owl and some other designs, and then painted it brown like I did here, and then went over it with this coppery paint. I just loved the way it turned out. So that's why I kind of wanted to do this the same. So here I'm trying to go over the tops of the designs that I have on here in the modeling paste to help them stand out. And so as you can see, as I'm going over those designs, they're, really starting to, pop out. So then you can see them. So that's what I'm doing here. And then I'm trying to paint over the top, or, of where the letters are around it so that they will, stand out and you can see, but as you can see there, you still can't read what it says because it's just not, yeah. So I'm trying to go in between the letters and stuff with a smaller brush and get around those letters. And then I go in, I believe, with the black paint again and do some more painting inside the letters. And so yeah, I got a little fussy to get the title on here the way that I wanted it to be, but in the end, it turned out great, and I was really happy with it. So even though, it took some time and was fussy getting it done, I was really happy with the results. So yeah, here I'm going in with just even a smaller brush to try to just get right down in those grooves, and using the copper paint to make sure that I get around the edges and the inside. So I should have probably cut some of this or fast forwarded through some of this, because like I said, it does get a little fussy, and I had to go back and forth to do this. But even after all of this, I still wasn't completely happy with the way it turned out. So in the end, if anybody decides that they want to try this, your best option, which in the end I found out because I was tired of fussing with this, that and trying to get it to stand out, that if a black Posca pen, like a paint pen, just painting the whole thing, and then when it dried, just go over it with the black Posca paint pen. Probably would have been so much easier. But there you go. So yeah, I wanted some of this on the rest of the cover, so I just brushed that on there, and then here I wanted a frame around where my title is, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm just drawing just a box around my title because I wanted that on there with a Posca pen. And then now in the middle and the inside, I'm trying to figure out, okay, where do I want my strings to be? So I just measure it with a measuring tape, and I poke the hole, and then I measure the other side with the measuring tape, and I'm using it all to get the hole started because my needle is very blunt and it doesn't want to go through the canvas, so it helped to use the awl to poke the hole first. And so then I pull both the strings up together, make them somewhat even, and then just tie it. Nothing fancy. And I'm going, where I'm poking the holes, I'm poking it like, just above and just below where the cardboard is on the inside, that I put on the inside for this cover. So I'm not going through the cardboard, I'm just going through the canvas, and I'm going around the whole thing. I know some people will, put the elastics so that they're just on the inside and you don't see them on the outside. I was trying, at first I was attempting to do it like that, but since it just didn't feel like it was going to be very sturdy since it was just on the canvas part. I don't know, I just didn't care for it like that, and I don't mind if the strings are showing on the outside of the cover. And I only need one elastic anyway for, each booklet that I'm going to put. So then here's the book completed after I put all the strings and then put all my charms and everything on here. I also put elastics for a closure in the middle. So here's all my charms that I found. I went through my stash and got some ceramic beads here, and these are some little leather kind of things that I found. These are boho beads that I made and added charms to. some more leather, like pieces of leather, some keys, ceramic beads, and other charms that I found. Tied all those on the strings from all the binding and got this string on here to close it. And then this is a composition book that I painted to match my cover, because I'm going to use this for the class as well, because you need a composition book. And then for the writing part of it, and then here's all the journals that I made out of the pages. So I just folded them in half. I sewed them three, down the middle, very easy, 3 holes, quick stitch. So basically there's 1, 2, 3 holes, came up through the middle, went to one side, then the other, then back through the middle, and tied it off. Very simple. Put it in the book through with the elastics, and there you have it. That is my book of days that I made for my class. Really excited. Can't wait for it to start. Thank you guys for stopping by and watching. My apologies for it being such a long video, but it was a long process. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.